As the regular season rapidly approaches its close and teams start to clinch playoff spots and rest up for the postseason, we can officially say that we're entering an era of all new contenders and team building in the league. In the West, we've seen combinations of youth and experience come together to create unprecedented success for a squad like OKC, whom I've talked endlessly about. And with them having a ridiculously versatile combo of length, scoring prowess, and defense, they look to be an issue for years to come. In the East, has seen Boston remain almost, if not just as dominant as they were last year by running it back with the same squad that bought them a title. But the success of Boston and OKC has been talked about and forecasted since last year. And the real story this season has been the meteoric rise of a new contender in the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is one scary team. Following their second-round loss to the Celtics last year, the Cavs have had what can only be described as a collective "I understand it now" moment from their entire roster, and jumped from the middle tier of the East into championship contention in what can at a glance appear to be just an unexplainable twist of fate. But this transformation has been spearheaded by a bunch of factors, ranging from the growth of Evan Mobley into legitimately one of the most versatile offensive and defensive weapons in the league, to the mindset shift that likely head coach of the year Kenny Atkinson has brought to Cleveland. And there really is no wrong answer when it comes to deciding what's made the Cavs so successful. However, when you look at Cleveland's team as a whole, their entire story of roster growth and consistency is best represented by two pieces on their team that have been invaluable to their newfound success: Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill. Merrill and Jerome's success has not only helped fuel Cleveland, but marked a massive turning point in the careers of two guys whose journeys have been filled with misuse, lack of opportunity, and overall doubt. And by examining their parallel journeys and looking at what's made them so successful this time around, we can learn a lot about player development, the benefits of a difficult journey in the pros, and what the future of championship roster construction will look like. So, let's talk about Merrill, Jerome, and the journeyman who saved Cleveland. Despite Merrill and Jerome finding themselves together on the Cavs in a similar position, their NBA journeys simultaneously began in vastly different places while having a lot of the same assumptions made about their game. For Jerome, coming out of college in 2019, he was carrying a lot of momentum after a big-time tournament run. Ty ended a solid 3 years at Virginia by capturing an NCAA title as one of the main contributors on a dominant squad, averaging 13.6 points and an ACC best 5.5 assists on 43.5% shooting from the field and 40% from three on 5.4 attempts a game. During that championship clinching run, Jerome had something of a coming out party for a lot of draft scouts who doubted his production in the regular season, with him dropping big-time performance after big-time performance in the tournament before ending his career with a 16-point, 6-rebound, 8-assist performance to beat Texas Tech. And this flashy end to his college career led to him garnering quite a bit of attention heading into the draft, with scouts highlighting not only his shooting consistency from behind the arc, but also his positional size, above-average playmaking for a combo guard, and in what would unintentionally become the defining statement of his career, claiming that he had, quote, the mental makeup and IQ to succeed in the league. So despite the concerns that these same scouts had about Jerome's lack of athletic tools that they said would prevent him from being a standout in the league, he managed to play himself into the first round, joining the Suns as their 24th pick via a trade with Boston. But while Jerome's star-studded journey to the draft did include him proving some doubters wrong, he had nowhere near as hard of a time as Merrill had even getting to the league. By comparison, Merrill had a similarly dominant end to his college career, with the 6'5" guard averaging 19.7 points and 4.1 rebounds on a conference-best 46.1% from the field and 41% from three on nearly 7 attempts a game. However, Merrill attended Utah State in a smaller conference, which caused doubts surrounding his level of competition that he was ultimately unable to put to rest, as the tournament would be canceled his senior season in 2020. This led to Merrill finishing his college career with significantly less fanfare, and while his draft scout did acknowledge his ability as a big-time shot maker, there were ultimately questions about his ability as an athlete and capability to adjust to NBA-level competition. But similar to Jerome, it was that very last line of Merrill's scouting report that highlighted the thing that would save his career, this time bringing attention to Merrill's defensive IQ and toughness that will, quote, quote, allow him to hold his own. So just 1 year after Jerome played his way to the 24th pick, Merrill came out as the very last pick in the 2020 draft, going 60th to the Milwaukee Bucks. But even though they came into the league with very different expectations and levels of hype, they'd each face similar struggles on their journey to Cleveland. Focusing on Jerome, he joined Phoenix at a time where they were backed up with guard talent from the tanking years, and despite him being listed as the second-string two-guard on their depth chart, after missing the start of his rookie season to an ankle sprain, he was thrust into a battle for the backup point guard position. And this was not only a role that he wasn't suited for at the time, but his consistent shooting that had been trademarked since college absolutely disappeared, with him only averaging 3.3 points and 1.4 assists on 33.6% from the field and an abysmal 28% from 3 on 1.6 shots a game. So with his shooting and playmaking ability becoming a non-factor in his rookie season, and Phoenix having, frankly, better options at the backup PG spot, Jerome spent the year either in the G or on the bench, only playing 12 total minutes over Phoenix's undefeated run in the bubble and ending his son's tenure by being shipped to the Thunder in the offseason. This shift put Jerome in a position to thrive momentarily, but ultimately, his time with OKC would be ended by that same combo of a lack of consistency and newer, more hyped prospects taking its place. His first year with the Thunder would be incredible, as he'd average 10.7 points and 3.6 assists on 44.6% from the field and 42.3% from 3 on 5.1 attempts a game, placing him in the 93rd percentile amongst all combo guards for the season in three-point percentage and the 82nd percentile of assist to usage ratio. Jerome's great season looked to be the turning point for his career after that tumultuous run in Phoenix. In entering the 21-22 season, he was expected to build on it with the same consistency he'd shown since college. But unfortunately, he'd underperformed for the Thunder, seeing a significant drop-off in his points, assists, and ultimately minutes with the team, as OKC chose to focus on developing younger draft picks like Trey Mann and Josh Giddey, as opposed to the 24-year-old that was experiencing yet another low point in production. And with the writing on the wall, this would ultimately send Jerome to the Golden State Warriors on a two-way contract for the 2022-23 season. And in what would be his final stop before joining Cleveland, Jerome would yet again find himself on the outskirts of the rotation, bouncing between the G League and receiving limited minutes in the NBA. In the 45 games that he'd appear for the Warriors, Jerome would average 6.9 points and 3 assists on 48.8% from the field and 38.9% from 3 on 2 attempts a game, showing flashes of the player he'd eventually become and having a return to form whenever he was given the opportunity. But ultimately here, he'd be limited in what he was able to do by his two-way contract that capped the amount of games he could appear in at 50 for the season. The Cavs extended him a 2-year deal that the Warriors were unable to match, sending Jerome to Cleveland. To pause for a bit, Jerome's journey to the Cavs was unstable to say the least, with his opportunities in the NBA being snuffed out by his own on-court struggles, roster imbalance, and injuries that would ultimately continue to keep him off the court to begin his tenure with Cleveland as well. But while Jerome was struggling to find a consistent role in the league, Merrill was fighting for the opportunity to be on a roster altogether. As we covered earlier, Sam joined Milwaukee as the last pick in the draft, which on its own is enough to limit and in some cases even prematurely end an NBA career. But the added fact that this was the Bucks' championship year made it so that Merrill's chances on the court were few and far in between, only averaging 3 points and 1 rebound on 44.4% shooting from the field and 44.7% from 3. So despite the fact that his shooting splits answered the questions about his ability to translate as a scorer at the next level, they were unable to earn him any real time on court. So with Merrill unable to find any time on the court in the NBA, he went down to the G League and showcased an aspect of his game that would pay dividends down the line, as he was 30th in the league in defensive win shares at 0.123 and 66th in defensive rating at a 101.5. Numbers that don't necessarily jump off the page, but do tell us that the defensive prowess and IQ that had been discussed in his scout may have been more viable in the NBA than was initially expected. Regardless of his performance though, following the Bucks chip, Sam will be traded to the Grizzlies, where he'd start off in a major way with a 30-point performance in preseason against the Pacers, giving him that first taste of NBA success, but just making the next set of events all the more brutal, as he'd soon after suffer an ankle sprain that required season-ending surgery, leading to the Grizzlies waiving him. Then, Following his recovery, Sam would manage to sign a 2-year, non-guaranteed deal with Sacramento, but he'd be waived as their final roster cut just before the 2022-23 season, effectively ending his NBA dream for the moment. Though Merrill's NBA and G League journey seems far more brief than Jerome's, both guys represent two sides of the same unfortunate NBA coin, where older, less hyped prospects who may not have the reputation or position to have a longer leash can have their careers uprooted and derailed at a moment's notice, and nobody would ever bat an eye at the lost potential. And even with these two players, there's still differences, as Jerome received limited NBA opportunities to prove himself, while Merrill found his NBA career on its last leg just 2 years in through no fault of his own. But Merrill wouldn't be done just yet, as after he was waived by the Grizzlies, he entered his name in the G League draft and was selected first overall by the Cavaliers G League affiliate. And he'd ball out, averaging 18.4 points and 1.4 steals on 43.6% from the field and 44.1% from three, playing so well that it became impossible to justify not giving Sam another shot in the league. But as luck would have it, the Cleveland Cavaliers would give Merrill one more chance, signing him to a 10-day contract on March 3rd, 2023, and eventually converting him to a multi-year deal, gifting him the opportunity of a lifetime. And Sam would carry this hot scoring into the 2023 Summer League, where despite being a third-year player, he competed like he still earned nothing, playing 5 games and helping lead the Cavs to a Summer League chip, averaging a team-best 20.4 points and 4 rebounds on 45.6% from the field and 44.6% from three, this time on 11.2 shots a game. Despite this hot shooting, Merrill still entered the 23-24 season without a guaranteed spot in the rotation for Cleveland, and he'd still have to prove himself at the NBA level. But as luck would have it, injuries to Ty Jerome and other pieces that were initially ahead of him in the depth chart finally gave him the chance to prove himself, and Sam wouldn't disappoint. Following a breakout game on December 20th where he dropped a career-high 27 points on 8 made threes in a win against the Jazz, he found himself on a roll, averaging 8.9 points and 2.2 rebounds while shooting 40% from the field and 39.7% from three on 6.5 shots a game. Over this stretch, Merrill would find himself in the 76th percentile amongst all wings in total three-point percentage, 78th percentile of corner threes, and the 75th percentile of effective field goal percentage, providing top of the league level efficiency for a team that found themselves 15th in three-point percentage and desperately in need of a consistent sniper. Sam's off-ball movement and ability to cut behind defenses while also providing that lethal spot-up scoring gave Cleveland an offensive weapon that helped counteract some of the redundancy and overlapping skill sets their top players had. And media members and fans alike took note of how a coaching shift and expanded role on a revamped roster could help Sam elevate Cleveland to the next level in the not-too-distant future. And thus far in the 24-25 season, both for Jerome and Merrill, they found themselves as key contributors to this historic Cavs run, and they've done so in ways that only underscore how their difficult journeys have sharpened them as offensive and defensive weapons. In Merrill's case, despite him taking a bit of a step back as a shooter, averaging 7.1 points and 2.1 rebounds on 40.3% from the field and 36.9% from three, he's been showcasing the other aspect of his game that was foreshadowed when he was drafted, as he's been having one of the best defensive emergences for a guard that isn't being talked about. Opponents are scoring 5.2 points per 100 possessions less when Sam is on the court thus far, and their effective field goal percentage is also 3.7 points worse, placing Merrill in the 87th and 94th percentiles respectively amongst wings and fulfilling the defensive potential that his scouting report had briefly mentioned years ago. Furthermore, opponents are shooting 1.5 percentage points worse overall when guarded by Merrill and 4.2 percentage points worse from two-point range where the majority of shots against Sam are coming from, meaning that more than a few offensive players have been caught off guard by the lethal sniper turned sneaky good defender that Merrill has managed to become. And for Jerome, he's been experiencing a similar breakout offensively, becoming recognized as one of the best and most consistent scorers and playmakers in the league. On top of averaging a career-high 11.9 points and 1.2 steals, Jerome's on his way to joining the elite 50-40-90 club, as his splits of 50.4% from the field, 43.8% from 3, and 90.2% from the free throw line would make him the first player to do this since Kevin Durant in 2023. Furthermore, Jerome is in the 95th percentile amongst all wings in assist percentage, assisting on 23.2% of his teammates' made shots, and in the brief minutes that he's played point guard for Cleveland, they're in the 99th percentile both in efficiency differential and points scored per 100 possessions, proving that the quote, above average playmaking that Jerome was known for in college has evolved into an all-world caliber ability. And for both Merrill and Jerome, their unexpected resurgences in Cleveland should act as a lesson to the rest of the league and something of a blueprint for what the future of constructing a winning roster will be. Both players were guys who floated around the league, journeymen who found themselves desperately fighting for and hanging on to their spots while having to navigate short leashes, injuries, and limited opportunities that could have easily prematurely ended their careers and robbed us of two franchise-altering talents. And this is something that they've both been very open about in interviews, with Jerome saying that Golden State never gave him a true chance to develop, and Merrill saying that his experiences being cut and traded helped put that chip on his shoulder to stick around the NBA. Through finding guys like this to round out their roster, Cleveland's launched themselves into contention without the need to tank or sell out for a third star or even break the bank, as they've only committed a combined $4.6 million this year to two guys who are changing the course of their franchise. And that's really the heart of what this video is trying to get at, which is that the future of contending won't be through these star-studded lineups or repeated draft tanks for generational talents, but it'll be through finding those unexpected gems. The fringe rotation guys or players that have been waived before they've had a chance and who've had to endure a bit of that struggle in order to give them the versatility and mental makeup that's necessary to change a contender. So for all the Cavs fans out there, I'm extending yet another apology to you guys for any previous disrespect, because you guys have two players on your team that are redefining what it means to build a contender right before our eyes. But with all that being said, that's gonna do it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I can catch you in the next one.